Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is Elle Poole, and I'm our Director of Strategic Partnerships here at Adswerve. I'll be your moderator for today's session, where we will discuss key insights on AI, search, and creative, all stemming from big events on that last screen, including Possible, Google Marketing Live, and Cannes Lion. I myself had the pleasure of attending GML and Cannes, so I'm really excited about these topics today. Before we begin, let's do some fun housekeeping. So first and foremost, yes, we are recording this and we'll share a copy of the recording with you afterwards. If you have any questions during the webinar, please don't hesitate to post them in the questions section of the webinar control panel. We'll get to as many questions as we can during the Q&A at the end of the discussion today. And if there's any more in-depth ones, we can go ahead and respond to those questions during our email session at the end of this as well. So if you notice any technical glitches, like audio going out or slides not advancing, please let us know in the question section so we can address those issues as soon as possible. As I mentioned, my name's Elle, and I'm our Director of Strategic Partnerships here at Adswerve. I've been at Adswerve for almost 14 years now, which means I've had a front row seat to watching this industry change and grow in some pretty incredible and wonderful ways. I've worked between our account management and client services team to now partnerships. That's why I'm so excited for this conversation today. I think it's going to bring about some great insights for all of us. In my role, I get to focus on building and supporting our partnerships, including our amazing partnership with Google, especially the team that G2 helps lead. So with that, let's get to the fun part. I'm excited to introduce our two panelists. First, we have G2. He leads both Google's independent agency for the US West region and the investor partnerships team for Google Ads in the US. He has just completed, G2, when you told me this, 19 years at Google. That is a very long time, and has worked across sales, partnerships, and product organizations, and works very closely with key Google executives across functions on Google's AI-powered marketing tools and solutions to drive predictable, accelerated, and profitable growth amidst constant disruption. So G2, thank you for being here. Happy to have you here today. And Kelly is a senior director overseeing agencies here at Adswerve. So with over a decade of experience in digital marketing and account management, Kelly specializes in helping agencies from independent shops to large holding companies navigate today's complex media landscape. Her deep expertise enables her to address the unique challenges agency partners and their clients face, whether that's unifying media planning and buying, leveraging AI across marketing efforts, or maximizing value from the Google marketing platform, which, Kelly, we have seen very firsthand with all of our clients. So Kelly is definitely passionate about helping agencies move beyond just the basics and drive meaningful results. So thank you both for being here. We really appreciate it, and thanks for diving into this conversation today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Before we really get going, let me just give you a quick intro to who we are at Adswerve. We are your go-to expert for all things data, media, cloud, and tech. We are proud to be the #1 Google marketing partner, a top cloud partner, and Adobe's Emerging Solutions Partner of the Year 2 years running. With over 250 experts on our team, we help more than 800 brands and agencies maximize the use of their Google, Adobe, and other marketing platforms and tools. We actually log over 80,000 hours a year on client analytics projects alone and manage a staggering $1 billion in media spend. So if you have a marketing challenge, chances are we have already helped someone solve it, and we're ready to help you find your solution as well. So here's a quick look at what we're going to be covering today. So first off, we'll kick things off by setting the stage with a look at the current landscape, what's shifting and why it matters. Next, we'll dig into the highlights, unpacking key takeaways, common myths, and the realities we're all navigating. From there, we'll move into action, calling out a few insights to help you prioritize moving forward. And then finally, like I mentioned, we want to make sure that we save enough time for Q&A at the end and wrap up with any remaining thoughts or insights. So that was a lot at the beginning. Now we can actually dive into all of the fun topics and whatnot. So to get us going, we really want to help set the stage for today's topic. So when looking ahead at the next 6 to 12 months, which of these areas represents your biggest strategic focus for marketing growth?
I'm not surprised to see AI already at the top.
Yes.
Not shocking at all.
I had a meeting this morning, and that was my clients really focused on AI. Like there's so much they want to do with it. So I think it's just a big topic and focus for many at this time.
AI, okay, there is some search in there. Well, good news. We're going to be covering all of these. So let's go ahead and kick off some discussion with our panelists. So I am very curious from both of you what insights you took away from Possible, CAN, and GML. So G2, let's start with you. Do you have some broad question, but what are some key takeaways from any of these events that you want to kick off the discussion with?
Look, I had more tactical answers, but let's get to the macro theme first. First of all, it's great to have to join all of you here and connect, albeit virtually. I feel like there's a ton of synergy between our organizations, and there's a ton we can do together. There's a ton we've been doing together. Coming to the macro themes, I think the overwhelming theme is AI, but within that, there are three specific areas that everybody is talking about across all of these events. First is measurement, and the influence of first-party data, and the growing importance of it. How do we manage it? How do we do it in a privacy-safe way? And then what can it really accomplish in a world where everything is going to be AI'd or automated? The second big theme is creative. Ads have always had this promise of, you can always target the right audience at the right time with the right creative. It's always been a promise, but AI for the first time really enables that possibility really assertively and in a very crisp, easy to implement way. So everybody's talking about creatives. We started with, Possible in GML, and then we took it over in CAN, and creatives becomes one of the key differentiators of what humans can add to the loop, and really empower AI to drive the best possible results along with measurement. And then finally, I think if you can do everything through AI, and there's a little bit of human touch involved in making sure we understand audiences deeply, using first-party data, in ensuring that the right creatives are generated and used for campaigns and so on and so forth, why shouldn't you move to an outcome-based marketing model? Every conversation is starting to pan these three directions, and these three dimensions are some of the most important broad aspects of the AI conversation, from all of these different events, and even frankly talking to customers and partners now. And over the next 6 months, everybody's building everything around, what can we do with first-party data, what can we do with creatives and innovation there, and then finally, if AI promises all of these things, and that's the eventuality, how do we really focus on outcomes and understanding, the point of diminishing returns on marketing, and how quickly can we get there, from a standpoint as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and I love all three. But your point about outcome-based models, because it really underscores at the end of the day, the value of AI is only as good as the business outcomes it drives. And so I really believe we have to keep that front and center in how we work with all of our clients and with all of our partners. So thank you for that. And then to shift to you, Kelly, what about you? What is one crucial shift you saw? So perhaps it was in search, evolution of CTV, something that's going to impact video media strategies.
I found interesting is even I went to Possible, and then I was able to go to CAN, and I watched GML, and it was amazing to see how throughout these multiple months, like how things just shifted and how there was more to say or more results to show as it comes to these various topics. I think about G2, to your point about AI and outcome-based marketing, and CAN was the first place where I could actually hear about tangible use cases and results and impact, which was great because I think that's what we were all craving. But one thing that really kind of struck me is I know we've had a huge growth over the last few years in CTV. People are just interested. They want to buy YouTube TV. They want to tap into it. But in CAN, there was a lot about how consumers are where they give their attention. And there was a panel about women's sports hosted by the Female Quotient. And it was really interesting hearing, like, if you're going to invest, you should be investing in women's sports as much as you are men. So if you're going to invest in the NBA, like, you should be investing the same, if not more, in the WNBA to get more from it. Because live sports is actually one of the few ways we can, one, really grasp consumers' attention. But if you hear about the fans of the likes of the WNBA, they're very engaged. They're really, really into the sport. They care about the sport. I wrote an article recently just after, CAN from Marketing Week that said, 9.96 million consumers are more likely to purchase from a brand that sponsors women's sports versus 8.38 million for men's sports. So these audiences have the buying power. They're interested, they're engaged, and they're going to be across different formats, whether it's watching the game from their TV or they're scrolling on shorts at the same time. It's really about how our agencies and their clients working to adapt to activate buys across these various formats to meet consumers where they are, but leveraging first party data in a way that to make these experiences more personal, because you're not just going to do a live sports buy and run an ad that you run anywhere. If you're going to buy and invest into women's sports, you should have an ad that speaks to it. And yes, some brands do this incredibly well, but day in, day out, we don't see enough of that, like audience segmentation being applied appropriately. So if you know that your audience, where they like to show up, where they like to watch, whether it's live sports or whatever, do you actually know enough about them to make for a better outcome than simply ensuring that your ad is there where people are watching? Because at the end of the day, if these consumers are more likely to purchase, you want to maximize that moment as much as possible. And on the back of that, do as much as you can to track it so that every time you're investing in these channels, you actually know what the impact is and what the outcome is versus just, really surface level metrics.
I love this example. I love this takeaway. I think I could probably spend the rest of the webinar, if I'm being honest, just talking about women's sports and my passion there. But I'll go ahead and let us continue on. So Kelly, since we were both in Cannes, it was really so powerful to hear the momentum behind women's sports. And the WNBA example that you use, that really stuck with me because those numbers, they're not just inspiring, but it's smart business. And so it's really showing up in the numbers. If brands keep investing where the attention and the returns are, there's going to be data to support that and really the impact moving forward. So I love that. Thank you for that example. So moving on to myths, there's a lot of buzz and I would say sometimes misinformation when it comes to the world of AI and search. So in this next section, let's go ahead and tackle some of those myths versus realities, and then dive deeper to talk about some of the insights around AI, again, the top one on our poll, search, CTV, creative, and data. So first up, AI and the search shift. So let's start with the popular myth. The new AI mode in Google search may be good for consumers, but it's going to mean reduced traffic and revenue for publishers and advertisers. So G2, do you want to take this one? What's the reality there? What are your thoughts?
No softballs to begin, huh?
There's time for it. You got to go for it.
Look. I think I just wanted to start with a couple of very key principles that we follow at Google. We've always been committed to the open web, and we will continue to do so. And that's really important for all of us to understand and really embrace. AI, first of all, it's a myth, right? Because intent matters here. Blind traffic matters less. And with AI, we are able to understand intent through multiple signals better than ever before. And frankly, I think it will continue to get better in terms of really understanding what this consumer is searching for, what their intent is, and we'll be able to make sure from a website and SEO standpoint and from a marketing standpoint, SEM standpoint, we'll be able to surface what they need better than ever before. And it'll get better and better and better every day based on how these models are evolving. The other thing I'll say is I think our internal data actually shows that AI overviews actually lead to higher user satisfaction, increased search frequency, and also it drives higher clicks to web pages. So it's a myth, again, substantiated by a ton of our data, internal data so far. Look, this is the future arriving. 1 in every 5 queries actually already use AI overviews. As you know, the nature of search is changing, and we saw that in GML and Possible and all of that. It's more task-based now and highly personalized, and we have much longer, more complex, more specific queries. Right? We have 5 trillion plus queries a year and growing. And if you see, I remember, having the vantage point of being at Google for all these years. I remember quoting a stat in a presentation 10 years ago that 15% of all queries every day are brand new, and we've never seen that the day before. And it's happening even now. The queries are getting longer. The queries are getting multimodal with circle to search, lens, and so on and so forth. So if that's the new world, we should start figuring out how to embrace that from an SEO perspective. in terms of what's the right content to show, what's the right content to optimize for, how multimodal is the content on your website, and so on and so forth. So I feel like focusing on outcomes again, back to principles, focusing on revenue for publishers and advertisers and what that means from an optimization perspective in this new AI mode and AI search mode is going to be really, really important. So it's a new world, it's a new reality, and the sooner we embrace it, the better it is for all of us.
I completely agree with that. And hopefully that answer also helps put some people at ease, like, yes, this is a myth. So I know you spoke to this briefly, like you mentioned outcomes and really being able to lean into that and that this is a new world. But so for marketers and agencies, are there additional practical, actionable next steps that they should take to truly leverage AI effectively in search?
Yeah, as I mentioned, and I'll go to the next level of detail if it helps. I think the first key principle is content and the quality of it, how helpful it is, how assertive it is, how authoritative it is, but also how original it is, right? That matters now more than ever before, because that is the only way you can really differentiate content on your site versus every other site that's out there in that same realm. The second key principle, again, to follow, not just from a Google perspective, but more broadly, I think is how you go beyond text. Everything is going to be multimodal. There'll be new form factors. There'll be new ways to search. And I think rich images, video, and how do you really enable multimodal content is going to be really important. And so how do you create, content-rich pages and so on and so forth. The other important piece is how intentional and structured you can be about data and the visible content. How are you tracking website statistics will significantly change if you optimize for intent, which is commercial intent, even if you're a publisher or an advertiser, versus just engagement. Pure engagement meant a lot until AI really, really advanced, and now it's not just about that. It's about how you convert basic discovery into understanding intent and then facilitating transactions and conversions and revenue and so on and so forth. I think finally, very, very important, there are two sub-dimensions on the marketing side and how that facilitates marketing and really expanding revenue and growth possibilities. One is how do you use AI-powered bidding solutions in this new world? How do you really trust PMax? How can you really trust and scale AI Max in order to really understand intent and maximize intent, but also not let all of your growth and expansion opportunities be limited by budget, right? Mm. So if you, in conjunction, using some of our AI-powered ad solutions and making sure that there is enough scalability through your budget, I think we'll really make sure that you bring SEO, SEM together and really maximize the possibilities for your individual businesses.
There's a lot in there. I feel like, again, we could just even being original, being assertive, how overall AI-driven search, it's changing, but this is the reality of it. You hit on a few pieces as well in terms of measurement in data, because sometimes the real challenge is the implementation piece. So Kelly, shifting gears a bit, but so how are our clients and the Adswerve team adjusting their paid search strategies based on everything that you two just said? So I know we've talked about this a bit previously, but what role does a solid data foundation play in ensuring these new AI tools and strategy actually drive results?
If we're talking about search, I would say having that solid data foundation is almost more important sometimes than some of the other channels. Yes, it's really important if you want to track like what upper funnel activity drives in terms of an outcome. However, there's so much you can do with search, and I'm finding that we're really having to push sometimes partners who get really comfortable. We're trying to push them beyond the basics and make sure that they tick those boxes, because you don't get to do the cool stuff, really. You're going to miss out if you really don't adapt. And to your point about PMax, even, I know PMax is still a topic of conversation that comes up. We still have clients who are hesitant, and I'm like, you have to keep trying. If you tried it 6 months ago and it didn't work in that moment, try it again. This isn't something that's like it's not just because it doesn't work one time, it's not going to work again. The search landscape is really, really changing, and that data foundation is important because our search behavior is changing, especially when we look at younger audiences. I'm not always just going to type in a Google search. if I'm preparing for a trip, and myself and my friends have done this, I might go into Shorts and type in best places to eat in Lisbon or something. We were just talking about Amsterdam before this webinar started. What's worth seeing in Amsterdam? Where to rent bikes in Amsterdam? And it's because there are creators out there who create all this wonderful content, but that is all technically, you're finding it through search. It's just a different version that we sometimes forget about. And so it's really important, if we want to branch into these different formats, it's going to require a more advanced data play so you know what's working. So for example, if we're talking about like Search Ads 360 even, a lot of clients were pushing to adopt enhanced conversions as well as integrating offline data to use in value-based bidding, because you want to be able to know what's working and what doesn't. And those specific signals really help make for stronger search outcomes, because you need to understand that if the path is not linear, your search campaigns have to adapt to that, but you have to be able to adjust your bidding to adapt to that. It's not just using what's there. And while there is a lot there within the platform, I would say our clients who are really, really far on that tech maturity curve with search have some form of offline data being input. They have integrations with their analytics. They're really utilizing all that they're sitting on top of. And I know that there's usually like if I'm an agency, my client doesn't like sharing data. There are ways to ensure that there is privacy control so that you never see the data, but it's informing your bidding. So if we're moving to this place where we have, different type of search behaviors, if we're, reading AI overviews, like it's not just about making sure you have the offline piece. I think G2, to your point about content, SEO is almost just as important now in some cases, but it's at the end of the day, like it's time to push the clients who got really, really comfortable with search to evaluate what they're doing today and what they're ultimately missing out on and what it's going to take to get them there, because the more time goes on, ultimately, the harder it's going to be, like the farther behind you're going to be if you don't start to kind of make sure those pieces are in place.
Pushing the envelope with that. I love that. And I think it's very clear AI is evolving the core search experience and what that looks like. So then keeping that in mind, what about other channels? So GT, I'm going to throw it back to you. So how might this AI first approach create new opportunities for advertisers beyond, and we talked about it a little bit, but beyond traditional search. So in areas like CTV, YouTube, and overall buying programmatically.
It's such a great question because, again, it gets back to our first principles, right? We're actually seeing, biddable grow faster than traditional methods broadly. And that's all powered by Google AI. And again, it's going to get better and better and better every day. Look, let's take CTV, for example. It's a key area where, if you actually look ahead, over 90% of CTV will actually be transacted programmatically by the end of this year. And for buyers using, our DV360, for example, we're already seeing 60% higher revenue growth for leading AI adopters. So it's not just about DV360, but are you using all the best practices that really power you ahead and position you for success in a world where, there are new queries, there's more intent signals, and so on and so forth. And I think that's where the game-changing aspects really are. How can you really trust biddable media, and how can you really make sure you have the right data piped in, to Kelly's point, and you're focusing on the outcomes rather than what you do with one channel versus the other. I would say broadly, again, as a principle, trust a platform like ours, trust a platform like DV, and make sure that you have the right signals coming in from a measurement standpoint, and right micro audiences figured out based on really good clean room technology that dissects that data and figures out exactly what the micro audiences are. Focus on the creative, and focus on the outcomes you want to drive, and don't frankly overly worry about channel splits beyond a certain point, because AI would do a far better job on figuring all of that out than any one of us can. And this is not just from Google perspective, more broadly.
No, I completely agree with that. Like AI, it really is going to be a better indicator across the board. So it's really not just a shift about where consumers are, but a shift in how we buy the media with AI at the center. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Like I said, the industry is moving towards some of those aspects. And think about TV. It's again moving towards more flexible, biddable buying. And if you can align TV to digital for better performance and optimization, if you can connect the dots across all parts of your media investments, that is the recipe for success in this new world, I think. Again, if you look at a combination of DV360 and Campaign Manager 360, it'll help you maximize reach and efficiency by tapping into this vast network of inventory. By the way, that inventory is growing pretty quickly. It already reaches 98% of all US CTV households. But if you think about how video creation's been commoditized by some of our latest platform announcements around VO and so on and so forth, all the focus is about connecting with the right customers using AI and your own data. And let DV360 and Campaign Manager 360 and so on and so forth figure out the rest for you.
Okay, well, that's a powerful case for how AI is unlocking opportunities. So thank you, G2. And we're seeing so many clients lean into CTV because AI, again, G2, you touched on this, but is finally making it possible to bring that same level of precision and optimization that we expect from digital into TV. So at Adswerve, we really like to help brands connect the dots. So getting their first party data ready, setting up the right measurement strategy, and making sure they're really unlocking the full potential of the tools that you just mentioned. So DV360, CM360, because that is where the magic happens overall. So again, Kelly, we keep going back to you with measurement. So to pull a measurement a bit, in your recap blog from Cannes, you mentioned a key challenge of getting the full measurement picture. Would you like to share anything about that? Any additional compelling ideas like using clean rooms to unify data across multiple platforms? Space for you.
I actually had a conversation with one of our agency partners yesterday as they, have adopted YouTube TV via DV360, but they were actually looking at, can we adopt CTV, but we need certain granularity of data. They need like that log level data. And, as we continued the conversation, we were like, there's a way we can help you get the data points you need, because for them, they only do CTV, TV, and digital out of home buys. Like that is their focus as an agency. And we want to help them get the data so that they can show to their clients, as they do actually a lot of performance-driven campaigns, the impact of investing in CTV via DV360. And so it was really interesting as we continued this conversation, the wheels just kept spinning and spinning of like, there's options here. Like we can definitely help you figure this out. I know the clean rooms, like using ADH is definitely one like route that agencies can take and their clients. I would love to say it's going to be attainable for everybody. We work with agencies that are from small guys to big indie agencies, and I think there will be a time and place where ADH is a wonderful solution. There's also many times where it's just about, can I set up data transfer to get as much data as possible to make the most informed decisions and feed it into whatever other framework we built as an agency. So it's really about finding what works, finding what data you need, but finding how to get it and what makes the most sense for you as a marketer, as an agency. There's so many things with DV360 and the Google GMP stack in general that a lot of our clients sometimes just don't know. And that's not because that they don't try. It's just there's so much there, and it does take a few conversations to uncover how you can really marry data together to eventually feed it into prediction models so that you can plug it back into the media platforms. Like the GMP is built for that kind of workflow. That said, if you want all your data fed into one place and, be able to show outcomes for this activity, because it's activity that many are still adopting. There are many clients we have who are running their first CTV campaigns because it's not been attainable. Their CFO has not signed off budget to say, go right ahead and run it because it can drive outcomes. We're now at a place where we can actually connect those dots to say, here's your path to purchase. But at the end of the day, like that framework has to be there for everyone to see that impact of what investing in YouTube TV and additional CTV channels through DV360 brings. Because we all want to show up where the audiences are. Like we all know that like I use mostly ad-supported streaming. That's just a preference when I like seeing the ads, but many of us ourselves are seeing ads day in, day out on a streaming platform. So we know we want our clients to be able to show up there. We also know at the end of the day, if we don't do that measurement piece, they're going to ask, well, what was the ROI of that? Even if that's not the goal of that campaign, it's going to come up eventually down the road. especially if we start to talk about things like incrementality and whatnot. So it's just making sure you have everything set up and are using tools like DV360, which has native capabilities to help you do that. Otherwise, yeah, you're going to have a lot of questions to answer, and you won't get to do the fun stuff and invest in these areas that are massively growing.
Yes, I agree with that. If you want to do the fun later, you got to do the work up front. Make sure you have the data, make sure you have the measurement there to support it. So those are really great insights. Thank you, Kelly. I think it's clear that AI is fundamentally changing the how. So, how are we finding customers? How are we buying media? And how we're going to measure that performance across channels like CTV. So then going to switch gears a little bit. So what about the creative? And we were all at Cannes. So that was a huge theme at Cannes. And I think that there's a lot of fear that AI is going to replace human creativity, creative teams. So let's go ahead and tackle that next. Kelly, I'm going to come to you next. But before I throw this to you, I want to share something that I heard on a panel in Cannes that really stuck with me. So the conversation was exactly on this topic. And someone posed the question, so when it comes to AI, are you going to be a shaper or a user? And more or less saying that there's not really a third option, that AI is here. We're all going to land in one or two of those camps. And personally for me, because I can even have the thought of like, AI, it's coming, what does this mean? But I love that mindset because it really pushes us to stay curious, keep learning, and then stay open-minded and across the board. So Kelly, with that, I realize I have shared my take, but what's yours? Is AI actually going to replace our creative teams?
I don't know if it's as black and white as stating like AI is going to replace creative teams. I think we got to think about it slightly differently, because I think if we go back to Cannes and Stephen Bartlett, who does the Diary of a CEO podcast, if you've not listened, highly recommend. He's incredibly engaging. His podcasts are sometimes like over 2 hours long, and he just researches. He doesn't prep questions. It's incredible. But he had said on the YouTube stage that every stage requires a different type of content. So we focus so much, particularly with creative, we're like, what is the sizing? What sizing do I need for this inventory type? Am I running, do I have DCO creatives? Where is the creative going to show up? What environment is it going to live in? We focus so much on those elements that sometimes I think we also forget what creative is originated for. It's meant to convey emotion. It's meant to bring out emotion. It's meant to tell a story. And we don't always think about that when we're adapting creative, we're thinking beyond just adapting sizing to fit a particular format. Because he even spoke about, having the video look like you're, shooting it yourself in your face, like if it's your phone staring back at you, and it drives higher engagement. He has all these data, and he's obsessed with data analytics, so he follows this to a T. And, I think AI is going to have a big impact on creative teams, but it's going to be more in the way of, it's going to help them be more efficient and more effective. They get to be the idea generators, and they get to be the ones to come up with these amazing concepts. But when it comes down to, adapting videos to different lengths or to different environments, to that personalization element, AI is going to be able to help in those ways. And if we think about even just the creator economy, it's still very much growing. It can be incredibly key to a brand's success. Creators are also strategic creative partners for really authentic storytelling. Mm-hmm. And it's going to continue to help drive that shift from linear TV ad budgets to this like kind of creator-led CTV. I mean, we've all seen some ads that kind of go viral because they look like they were shot on a phone, or it's a creator. Like I've seen those, but YouTube is the new TV in some respects. More people watch YouTube on their TV screens than any other device. And so if we're talking about creative and combining it with AI and what its impact going to be, it's more about how you're efficiently and effectively adapting to different stages, not just the sizing, but the content, so that you can meet your audiences where they are, but you can personalize it better to them as well. So it's not going to be the AI is replacing creative teams, but I also remember hearing from Cannes that someone advised it's not about you having AI take over your role. It's about how you yourself use AI in your role to make it even easier or better for you. So there is kind of a bit of an onus on creatives too, just to figure out for themselves of how am I using AI to make me an even better creative than I was before.
Yes. I love that, Kelly. And there's so much in what you just said about AI and how we should be thinking about future proofing. Like, what does this look like? How are we thinking ahead? And I love that you brought up the Stephen Bartlett session. I was a big fan of that as well. There were so many great insights, pages and pages of notes that I took from that. So G2, coming back to you. So as Kelly mentioned, the importance of different formats, authentic storytelling, how this is going to drive a shift of TV ad budgets. How are Google's platforms evolving to support, more engaging and interactive creative formats? And what should marketers and agencies explore?
I loved how Kelly elucidated, the details of how the creative role will evolve. I just wanted to share one example before going into what Google's doing. I spoke at Cannes with one of our top agency partners, and they're absolutely best in class on creative. And they win a ton of really big logos based on creative and their strength on creative. And they mentioned this one interesting thing that gives me so much hope for the creative industry in general and how it can really go to the next level, not just from a industry standpoint, but also for the talent in the industry and how they can really evolve and really tap into what the human power is, on the creative side. And this guy who runs the creative effort said, we have 100 people who actually only do creative at our agency, and it's a very performance-focused independent agency. And these 100 people would churn 3 creatives per day. And what they really wanted to do was spend a lot of time thinking through what the concepts were, understanding audiences, and actually being creative, as creatives want to spend time doing, right? And if you actually look at what this guy actually ended up saying, it's not about creating those 3 creatives a day. It's about really thinking through the concept itself. And they wanted to spend a lot of time doing that and not really figuring out how to use machines and tools and, tactical things to churn out those 3 creatives a day, because that production and execution is not fun for people. And it really doesn't tap into the best of human potential. And so the same team, the 100 people, would actually now turn up and churn 100 creatives a day using some of our AI tools, which I'll just talk to you about. You'd rather do that, use machines, understand the core concepts, and then churn 100 creatives in a day, and make sure that those 100 creatives are multi-format, multi-channel. It optimizes for all sorts of inventory across all sorts of channels, and really maximize results for those customers. So spend a lot of time on the creative aspect of ads. Use some of our tools, and then churn and experiment and scale, because again, the first part is what humans really do well. The execution and the scaling, I think AI will do better than anybody, and that truly is the power of our ads. And within Google, we do 3 broad things. I think one is the whole new AI creative tools. We are bringing some of the cutting edge features from models like Veo and Imagen directly into Google Ads, and that's huge. Those were the recent announcements. AI can now turn a static image into a dynamic video and help generate creative variations. That'll help you fit different formats and really maximize all sorts of inventory across our platform. The second broad thing we're doing is Asset Studio. It's not enough to just create creatives. We need to figure out what is the best unified hub, right? And we launched Asset Studio inside Google Ads, so you can create, generate, preview all these assets that you created using our tools. And then AI then suggests new campaign ideas based on real-time trends. So imagine all of that exists within the Google Ads account, and then you can do all of the experimentation within the platform itself. And then, of course, finally, we're launching a ton of interactive ad formats, and that's going to be really exciting too. I don't know if you've heard about shoppable CTV ads that lets viewers use a QR code, very similar to how you all took the surveys today. And interactive video ads that blend storytelling with shopping directly within the video. Imagine the power of that as consumers engage with all of these different formats, especially around video.
I love that, and I feel like there's so much excitement and energy in what you just shared, along with, I love what you started with, but the human-powered creative. I think that both of those can live together within this industry, and they're both necessary and very important. So that's great. Thank you, G2. So I feel like with all of this, we've covered the myths, the realities of AI in search, the rise of CTV and YouTube, and then the role that creative is going to play in this new landscape. So let's turn our attention to what we can do next. So it's time for the final section, the action plan. So there was a lot that we covered. I felt like I could have taken just like pages upon pages of notes from hearing from the two of you and all of your insights. So again, thank you. But let's bring it back to the three big takeaways from today's conversation. So first, and keep going back to data. So AI and the data that fuels it. So we have heard throughout the webinar, without high quality, intentional first party data practices, AI can't do its job. So the future of marketing is going to be built on how well we design and maintain that data foundation. Second piece, leveraging generative AI. So it's not just about the speed, it's about using Gen AI to create smarter, more personalized content and audience strategies, and doing it in a way that's authentic to your brand. So I'm going to say this, but bad grammar is in. Again, we keep going back to this Stephen Bartlett session from Cannes, but so that bad grammar is in. It's another Cannes session learning, and that just feels so important to be taking away from this as well. So the third takeaway, shifting to outcomes-based marketing. So we're moving beyond optimizing based on historical data and moving towards predictive values that drive ROI and as close to real time as you can get. So that shift, it requires new ways of planning, measuring, and of course, how you're partnering together. Moving ahead to Q&A, so we've covered a lot of ground today, from AI and data practices to personalization and outcomes-based marketing. So now we would love to hear from you. So this is your chance to really ask you two, Kelly, anything that's on your mind. So go ahead and type your questions into the question block in your GoToWebinar control panel, and then we will get to as many of these as we can. Give a few seconds for you to be thinking about your questions and then share them here. Okay, so we see one coming in right now. So some marketers are doubling down on Amazon, especially with its Roku partnership. Is that the best bet, or are we missing discovery moments elsewhere? Kelly or G2, I'm not sure who wants to take that one.
I'm happy to take it, and Kelly, feel free to add. Look, it's the right question. You're absolutely right. Amazon is a powerhouse for capturing shoppers at the point of purchase. But the real strategic question, as you alluded to, is how are you really creating that demand in the first place? And as performance marketers, I'm guessing most of you here, based on the attendance list I saw, are performance focused. And we've never really thought about this deeply enough, and it's imperative that we do in a world where the funnel is collapsing. How do you really create demand in the first place? And I think that's where our platforms differ. Amazon's great at capturing existing demand. We are really good at creating that demand in the first place. And of course, helping transact down the funnel, which we started our whole ads journey with being really good at the bottom of the funnel. But our ability to create demand is something that we really need to pay a lot of attention to. All the decisions happen on Google, then they transact on platforms like Amazon. So I think broadly, we need to think about three things, which is, how do you really win the discovery phase? What does that mean in the first place? And how do we really partner to win the discovery phase? It's these crucial moments of inspiration on search, on YouTube, where your customer, next set of customers are building their consideration lists. So how can you really partner with Google, Adswerve, and really make sure that that's front and center of your business planning, not just marketing planning? The second piece is around how do you really leverage AI products to really maximize full funnel? Like I said, the funnel is collapsing. There's no real point to go through the old segregation of the funnel and figuring out how individual solutions fit into those pieces of the funnel. Take Performance Max, for example. We actually automate the entire customer acquisition process through the entire network. Search, YouTube, display, discovery, we have Gmail. If you actually look at all of that, if it's the same consumer going through all of these different platforms within Google, how do you find them and how do you build demand efficiently, not just harvest it from one ecosystem? I think that's the whole full funnel potency of solutions like Performance Max and AI Max. And by the way, there's all this new content that's being created. How can you be there? You can't really figure out what keywords to build, and how often are you going to iterate your keywords anyway, especially if keywords getting longer and 15% of searches are brand new every day. So you have to trust platforms like Emax and AI Max.
Well,
And then finally, I think this whole thing around intent signals. At Google, we see the why behind the buy. And signals across maps, search, YouTube, all of that really allows you to find customers based on where they are in their life moments and passions and so on and so forth, long before they're in a shopping cart. I hope that answers your question.
If I could actually tack on L to G2's answer as well, I think, for all of our current Adswerve clients who are listening to, like, there is a lot in the DV roadmap at the minute that is very focused on connected TV in particular. And I know Amazon announcing its Roku partnership, and they are investing in the third-party space with more publisher relationships on the supply side. DV360 has already had a plan to double down on CTV for a while, and it continues to get better and better, and there's more coming down the roadmap. So while it may seem really exciting at first, there's already a lot within DV360 that you can do that you may not be able to execute within Amazon. So it's really important to kind of evaluate, what makes the most sense. And, to G2's point, Google's done a really good job at the beginning of drumming up demand already. So it's important that you kind of not just look at it from the, oh, this is shiny and new, but actually look at the capability and what's already living there and what's coming down the road in the very short term as well.
I love that. Okay, well, that is a great answer. So thank you to the both of you. We had another one come in. I know we're getting tight on time. So if we could spend a minute or two on this, how will AI search impact competitive conquesting? If AI pulls your competitor as the main source, how can you outbid that? And it's a great and in-depth question as well.
Yeah, look, I think there are different ways to answer the question. I'll take one way, and I'm hoping that suffices. It's not about understanding queries in the first place. First of all, competitive keywords and so on and so forth, the strategy for that doesn't really change with how AI has been advancing, right? From an SEO standpoint and from an SEM standpoint, the principles are pretty clear. If the value that you offer is extremely clear, customers skew towards value. So you don't really have to worry about what that specific keyword is and how the competitor keyword is going to be differentially looked at by AI-powered ad solutions versus non-AI-powered ad solutions. At the end of the day, the intent is pretty clear, and it'll get more and more clear as AI inference algorithms get better and better and better. And if you are able to meet that intent with the power of your own brand, that is where you put all your focus on. Because at the end of the day, that's what wins. And frankly, as intent signals become more and more prevalent in terms of how we surface ads and how we match ads, that's one of the last few things you need to worry about.
That's a great response. And I feel like it can be a very broad question, just given, of course, you could go anywhere with competitive advantages and what that looks like. So G2, thank you for that. I know we had a couple other questions, so we can go ahead and follow up directly with you on that. But given time, I want to go ahead and make sure that everyone has time to be able to look at these additional resources. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up today's conversation on AI, the data that drives it, creativity, and then how we can all adapt strategically to what's next. I feel like even that last question that came in, what's next and how are we going to go ahead and compete with that? So if you'd like to continue with this AI fun, I would highly recommend that you check out our ebook that discusses 3 key areas where you can focus your AI marketing efforts. And then if you would prefer to schedule a one-on-one consultation with Adswerve and our team for really personalized guidance, you can sign up on our website, adswerve.com/contact us. And then with that, I would like to thank you so much, G2 and Kelly, for sharing your insights and expertise with us. And then for everyone who joined today, thank you for being here. And we hope you all have a great rest of your week. Thanks all.
Thank you for having us.
Have a good one.